Ageless is a puzzle platformer that released on the Switch this week, and developers One More Dream Studios have included a gameplay mechanic which sees you having to alter the age of plants and animals around you. It's certainly a unique concept, and publishers Team 17 have been on a bit of a roll recently in terms of the games they have been releasing, but will playing this one make you feel like you've aged 10 years? I'm Glen Bolger, thank you to Team 17 for the review code, and now let's find out. Ageless tells the story of a young woman named Kiara. She doesn't really feel like she has a place in the world and embarks on a journey into the forest to receive a gift from the elders, hoping that this will give her a sense of purpose. It doesn't initially, which just adds to her confusion about her standing in the world, although she does ultimately try to use her gift for a higher purpose. It's a story that touches on the feelings of self-worth, responsibility and confusion about trying to find your place and appreciating what you can offer. It's not quite as subtle as it perhaps could have been, instead revealing its themes in a way that's very on the nose. Gameplay wise, this basically equates to a puzzle platformer. Each level is made up of a number of screens, with you needing to navigate particular obstacles in order to reach the other side and advance to the next screen, with the beginning of each new screen containing a checkpoint. You have a useful wall jump move to assist you with this, but the core concept centres around the ability to increase or reduce the age of living creatures found within each level, and manipulating this particular variable is the key to solving a number of problems and puzzles that would otherwise deny you passage to the next screen. The way this works is that the protagonist carries a bow with her. This bow shoots two types of arrows, those that make something younger, done by holding down ZL, aiming with the stick and letting go of the shoulder button, or those that make something gets older, and this is done in a similar way, albeit this time you hold down the ZR button. For example, early on you will be presented with plants. Shooting and making these older will see the plant shoot upward, ideal for using as a platform to reach an otherwise inaccessible area, whereas shooting a fully extended plant and making it younger will see it return to a sapling state, allowing you to pass by one that would have otherwise been in your way. As well as plants though, each stage has a particular type of animal that inhabits it, and these can be aged or de-aged as well. Animals have 5 stages of aging. They go from being an egg, to an infant, to adulthood, to being old, and to actually dying, and depending on which stage they are at when you find them, you can again age or de-age them. What purpose does this serve with animals? Well, to give one example, the first animal you encounter is a rhinoceros, and its adult form becomes very aggressive. Getting their attention will see them charge at you, perfect for smashing down walls. The older rhino is much more passive, but also much heavier, and luring these onto bricks will see them fall through, again clearing a path for you to continue on your journey. As well as this, you can also use the Ageless technique on yourself, which is done by pressing Y. This serves 2 purposes. First of all, going into this mode and then touching a living creature will allow you to essentially take its life force and propel yourself in any direction. A technique that will need to be used to overcome pitfalls and solve puzzles as you progress. You can even push into an animal and move it forward, again allowing you to solve particular puzzles. The other use though is that it's the only way to reveal the many relics that are scattered around the game world. You must be in Ageless mode when you collect them in order for it to count and reach the next checkpoint before dying to keep them. Whilst I had no issue with having to collect them in Ageless mode, as it added a nice additional challenge to the game to work out how this was achievable, I do wish that they were at least visible in normal mode, as I'll be honest, unless the puzzle to progress called for the Ageless technique to be used on yourself, I would normally forget to turn it on to look for the location of these relics and subsequently miss out on them through this. A combination of using the aging technique on yourself, animals and plants leads to some interesting puzzles as you try to get through each screen, some needing some pretty quick reflexes to pull off, as you may need to change an animal's age twice in quick succession for example, or use them as a platform to propel yourself from as they fall towards a pit. Using the aging technique slows down time for a moment, giving you the time to get the necessary shot off. Credit where it's due, this mechanic is pretty clever, and it's impressive just how many direct puzzle ideas it offers, and how intricate they become the further in you get. Each new area will have its own plants, animals, or enemies are added later on as well, complete with their own mechanics in terms of what happens when you use the aging technique on them. These actually change the gameplay up quite a bit, with things such as plants that begin shooting thorns at you during one of their evolutions, or the inclusion of water-based animals, with the youngest variation being a fish which provides you with oxygen underwater, to an orca that propels you upward in a burst of water. It doesn't all work though, to be honest, and the underwater sections, to give you an example, felt quite heavy in terms of their controls, and you also seem to get stuck on the walls quite often, leading to you running out of oxygen, which was quite frustrating. Another weaker aspect of the game, unfortunately, was the boss battles. These occurred at the end of each set of themed levels and generally consisted of an endurance run of sorts, with you being chased by the boss and having to avoid their attacks, or use your aging technique on obstacles on the fly in order to either propel yourself forward or slow the boss down. The biggest problem with this is that until you encounter the boss, checkpoints are very frequent, occurring at the beginning of each screen as I mentioned earlier. They are much more spaced out for the boss battles though, and due to this, most people will replay these sections a number of times, having to repeat parts you've already done as you didn't quite make the checkpoint. Sometimes it also felt like the game shepherded you down a particular path only for the boss to attack you in a way which felt unavoidable, and at other times your character just feels a bit sluggish and is easily caught by the boss. These sections again just felt like a bit of a chore rather than the adrenaline fueled duels they should have been. Infrequent checkpoints also become a problem again near the end of the game, and it's frustrating because it's completely at odds with the structure of the rest of the game. In terms of the controls, as mentioned, the ZL and ZR buttons control your bow, and the bow mechanic itself just feels a little off. Trying to aim isn't as smooth or precise as it needs to be, and when you're flying through the air, having to shoot an object before landing on it, this slight lack of precision is all it takes to cause a death and a need to restart. Thankfully, restarts are quick, an essential ingredient for such a game, but they would also occur less often had the controls been a bit more responsive. Also, I found that whilst most of the time your character would lock in place when using the bow, occasionally she would creep forwards, and again this led to a few deaths. With that in mind, gameplay at its core is enjoyable, the aging mechanic is clever, and the puzzles are intuitive, but certain sections will cause frustration due to those missteps, and gameplay scores 12 out of 20. Controls just aren't quite precise enough for a game of this nature, and you'll feel as if they are working against you at times, particularly on those boss battles, and they score 11 out of 20. In terms of the visuals, Ageless adopts a pixel art style with a minimalistic approach to character design. There are a fair selection of locations, ranging from forest to a castle, and the detail in the background is of a higher level than the characters, and they complement each other because of this. The best aspect of the visuals for me was the strong colour palette used. It really does help to create a very crisp and clean aesthetic that is incredibly pleasant to look at. What doesn't come across quite so well is the character animation, which uses the same basic approach, and while some of it works well, such as Kiara using her bow in mid-air, other parts such as the wall jumping technique look like she is literally bashing into the wall and hurtling upwards. Audio wise, the score is appropriate to the action being played out on the screen, with calming music being played during puzzling sections and the intensity then stepping up as you enter a boss battle, for example. I particularly enjoyed the music on the title screen, which had quite a melancholic and somber feel to it, but this almost felt like the highlight for me, with it never being particularly memorable after this. To be fair, nor was it ever irritating, which is certainly a positive owing to how often you may have to replay certain sections. Visuals have a nice blend of simple pixel art and bright and bold colours, and definitely work well for this type of game, and they score 14 out of 20. Audio complements the gameplay well enough, and its non-intrusive manner suits the die and try again nature of the game, and it also scores 14 out of 20. Ageless costs £10.99, $14 or €14.99 or $22 AUD 50, and it has a download size of 503 megabytes. It's hard to give an accurate estimate on how long it would take to beat, as you could well get stuck on one particular screen or a boss battle for ages while someone else may breeze through that same section. I will say that the length of the game feels slightly inflated by decisions like the occasional use of intermittent checkpoints compared to the very frequent ones found elsewhere, and the controls being a bit too loose. To be fair, the extra challenge of the relics to find does increase the longevity in a positive way, with the game's map showing you how many you found for each section, as well as giving other information such as how long each section took you to complete and the number of deaths you racked up. It's always nice to have this sort of information on the screen for you. For my personal playstyle, this is a game that I would chip away at over time, doing a few screens every so often, rather than binge playing it, as for me this would bring on some fatigue, and with that mindset I would feel happy paying this price, and with all things considered, value scores 14 out of 20. To conclude, Ageless is a clever mix of platforming and environmental puzzling with an interesting aging mechanic that serves the gameplay well. Its price isn't unfair, and it has a pleasant retro look. What lets it down though are a few inconsistencies in its gameplay, with boss battles not being particularly enjoyable, plus the controls just aren't tight enough to assist the player with the pinpoint accuracy the game demands. If you have enjoyed games such as Celeste, then there is similar fun to find here, just be aware of its flaws and adjust your expectations appropriately. Ageless gets a SwitchUp score of 65%. Thank you everybody for watching, I hope you enjoyed that review. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Is this the sort of game that interests you? Will you be picking it up? Please do let us know in the comment section below. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe, and until next time, happy gaming.